Hello. Get everything set up. Make sure I'm on sufficient internet here. Okay. I think I have it all together. Good afternoon. I'm Jamie Buckland with the West Virginia Few. Families United for Education, and we are going to talk about the Hope Scholarship, the latest happenings with Hope Scholarship, and try to give you some thoughts, if you will, and attempt to the best of our ability to answer some questions and set you up in a way that things make sense. So I want to pull up my questions that Jessica has been recording for me, and you guys are going to be patient and gracious because I'm doing all the things today. So let me get this pulled up and we'll be good to go. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to start out with a little bit of a overview, if you will, on who we are with the West Virginia Few, just quickly, briefly, so that you can kind of understand why things are being handled the way that they are and why I'm contributing information in the way that I am. So I'm Jamie. I'm a homeschooling mother from Mercer County, West Virginia, born and raised in Raleigh County, and have homeschooled the last 15 years, headed into our 16th year of homeschooling. I've graduated 2 of my children. They're 21 and 19, and now I have my 10-year-old and my 5-year-old. So my 5-year-old is actually was awarded the Hope Scholarship. And so that's kind of just personally where I've been. Over the years, I've planted and been an active part in launching homeschool co-ops, programs, tutorials, hybrids. That turned into me consulting other homeschool group leaders who were traditional homeschoolers, and that they were teaching their own children, and they would come together in a co-op setting to teach other children. And but everything was funded and inside the realm of family. So the family is homeschooling. They're not necessarily outsourcing instruction to another entity. And so I consulted and have clients across the nation that I've worked with on how to run a compliant program that checks the boxes with local, state, and federal regulations. Things like organizing, should you be an LLC or a nonprofit? I'm not licensed in any way as a CPA. I'm not an attorney. I cannot give you tax advice or legal advice. I can't give you legal advice on your education options. But what I kind of have found this specialty in is being able to look at all the options and assess the information and break that down into a way that can be communicated with parents, with group leaders, so that they then can go to a licensed CPA or to an attorney and figure out what they're going to do to launch those programs. And then I got asked by our homeschool group here in Southern West Virginia, the Raleigh Educational Association of Christian Homeschoolers, to be the legislative liaison. In 2019, went and lobbied for homeschoolers to have access to the SSAC. We passed that, then someone needed to implement that. And I've worked alongside in partnership with the WVSSAC and the Department of Education and county boards over the last, we're going into our 3rd year of accessing SSAC. And so all of that kind of came together in the fall of last year. I was introduced to the work of the Cardinal Institute in 2019 and to their efforts to bring school choice into West Virginia, the expansion of options, charter schools, ESAs, vouchers, all of that language was new to me because I came from that traditional homeschool background. So Hope Scholarship passed, right, in 2021. Shortly thereafter, we had this intent to sue that was filed. And so we knew that a lawsuit was going to come along and it was going to challenge the launching of, if you will, of the Hope Scholarship program. And so that happened, I believe, in like August or September of last year. So we've known now, really, for like a year, that there was a variable, an uncertainty in the launching of Hope Scholarship. So I wasn't super involved. And then in the fall, I got asked if I would consider coming alongside the coalition, a couple national organizations, a couple state organizations, in helping to work alongside the treasurer's office and support their efforts in launching Hope Scholarship. So kind of formally picked that up in January, and that's kind of what I've been doing. So I still help with SSAC and homeschoolers and a lot of other things, but Hope Scholarship has such potential to transform education in West Virginia that when I got involved, I wanted to be involved because of its potential. I believe that if we can get Hope Scholarship up and running, it has the potential, again, to fund families in making those decisions. And then it will be a vehicle for providers to have the resources to grow and expand how they meet the youth of West Virginia and how they meet their needs. That's kind of where we've been. In a few months ago, we had the development of the lawsuit. They requested an injunction. They were granted that injunction in July 6th, by Judge Tabbitt. Not only were they granted an injunction, which basically pushed pause on, prior to that, we were submitting applications, and providers had just gotten their portal open at the end of June, early July, to start meeting the need. And so the injunction pushed pause on the entire program. Judge Tabbitt went a step further and ruled it unconstitutional. And so now that needs to be fought. That needs to be the opposition and the folks who are representing Hope, the Attorney General's Office, Institute for Justice. They need to come together and they need to duke that out. And so what happened in the last week or so is that they requested a stay with the intermediate court, which is a brand new intermediate court just below the Supreme Court of West Virginia. And they said, hey, while you guys duke that out, can we go ahead and pick up where we left off in some capacity? And the intermediate court yesterday said, no, you cannot. So what do we do now, and what do we know? Well, we don't know that the door is completely shut as far as having a stay issued. My understanding, again, not an attorney, is that there isn't any reason, to my knowledge, that we couldn't see a stay requested by the Supreme Court. We do know that they're not currently sitting in session, the Supreme Court. We do know that they don't come back until September. So how strong is that probability, right? I have not heard from the Attorney General's office or from Institute for Justice to give you any information today on the probability of a stay being filed and being granted by the Supreme Court of West Virginia. I've been told to stay tuned. I'm terrible at just staying tuned, in that I realize some of you have hit a deadline. And so let's talk about that, right? We're at 9 minutes. I hope to be to this point within 10 minutes, because I want to try to keep this at 20 minutes for you guys to not take up your whole afternoon and evening. So here we are. I like to, if you've been awarded the Hope Scholarship, I like to break you down into two categories. Those who are in need of in-person care, and those who are not in need of in-person care. And if we looked at this like a flow chart, that's where we would begin. So you need 5 day a week. You need to take your children, or they need to ride a bus. They need to be with someone. They need to have another instructor. These are the families who were awarded the Hope Scholarship and were using those funds to pay a tuition at a private school. And now, without the Hope Scholarship, they can't afford to do that. So that's one group. In-person care is a necessity. Some of you may be able to afford your tuition, and your concern is, if we do that, if we continue with that, how do we make sure our children aren't considered truant because they were in public school at the end of last year, or whenever they met their eligibility, or they're a rising kindergartner? And so if you choose private school now, how do you make sure that you don't lose your eligibility for Hope Scholarship? We don't know. Very unsatisfying answer right there. But so you have filed a notice of intent for Hope Scholarship. And so if there's pause on that, and that's not a functional exemption from compulsory attendance, then what? And so you have questions. Do you need to file some type of notice of intent if they're going to go on to private school? That piece of it is, your private school is either an exemption B school and they have an agreement with the county, or they're an exemption K school and they have an agreement, they're registered with the state. And by enrolling in that school, your child is exempt. Whether or not it's paid for by you or by the Hope Scholarship Fund, that is the exemption from compulsory attendance. So if you're going to continue on with private school, the information that you need to have, again, I'm not in a position to offer you advice or guidance. All I'm in a position to do is provide you information and allow you to take that information to make a decision. But what you're going to be looking at is talking with that private school and saying, look, it's my understanding that my child was enrolled. Now they had a Hope Scholarship notice of intent. So how does the county know that we are satisfying compulsory attendance by enrolling full-time in public school or charter school, or we have an exemption on record? So I would recommend you work with your private school. If your private school doesn't know either, you guys can email me directly and we can assess your situation. So I'll talk a little bit about why I'm being so difficult. Let's say I started giving blanket guidance on filing a notice of intent for homeschool, on deadline specific. There are 55 counties, and in the state of West Virginia, every county has a certain amount of autonomy, and they get to choose how they operate. You've got different start dates. So even though there's a state code that they're subject to for truancy, you've got these different start dates. A homeschool notice of intent says that you need to file that upon commencement. So I can't even tell you, you need to file your homeschool notice of intent at a certain date, because I'll get fried by my fellow veteran, my peers in the homeschool community, for putting out any type of directive like that. And so I'm being so difficult because there is no way that I can give advice publicly, social media, broadly. There isn't any way that I can do that and it not be reckless, because the reality is someone could read the advice that I give to you on a Facebook post and they can assume their situation is apples to apples, when in reality, it's not. It's apples to oranges. I don't know if they have a kindergartner who is a Hope Scholar, or if they were enrolled in public school and they're leaving. So I can't give you what you want on social media or here in a live. What I can do, and what I have been doing for weeks, is you can fill out the form that acknowledges that I'm not giving you advice, that you understand I'm not an attorney. You acknowledge all of that, and then you direct your very specific question to me. And I can look at your county and I can look at your situation and I can say, here are the options that you want to be aware of. The reality is, if I could just put out blanket advice and it not be reckless, I would be doing that because it is very time consuming to do it the way that we're doing it. So it's not that I'm trying to be a gatekeeper. It's not that I'm trying to, oh, I have this information and I don't want to give it. It's that I've been at this a long time and I'm protective over the families of West Virginia, and I want to be sure that you have accurate information. So we've broken you down into two groups: in-person care. You are the ones who are who are closer to a deadline than those who do not need in-person care. Okay, you're a little bit closer to these deadlines because public schools are starting enrollment. If your kid plays sports and wants to be eligible, a lot of that is happening in the here and now. And so you have deadlines that you would consider that, like some of the families I'm working with right now, their kids are trying out this week for sports programs. So it may be, hey, we're not going to get to go to a private school. We can't afford that tuition, but at least the kid can try out for the soccer team, and we're going to move forward with that. So in-person care, deadlines to consider, in-person public school. The other option, and this goes out to you providers who are private schools, micro schools, learning opportunities that do provide more than just 1 or 2 days of care. Maybe you can provide 4 days of instruction in your micro school. I talked earlier today with my friend Kristen from Logan County, who runs a homeschool ministry and a private school. And she is engaging local businesses. She is engaging, encouraging her families to engage their church communities to cover tuitions. So for those of you who are the providers of the private schools and you're trying to figure out how to help families, I mean, maybe you've already thought of this, maybe you're already doing some of this, but if you can, communicate very, in a reductive way, very clearly, tuition is $3,800, tuition is $4,300, and create a flyer that can be distributed. Can you pay a fourth of that? Can you donate a fourth of that towards this scholarship, and find a business or a family in the church that could do that? And then work with those families to try to award those scholarships in a way that accomplishes your goals. We know that in Montgomery, we have our friends from My Life, My Power, from Montgomery Prep, Daniel and his team, Misty in Montgomery with Montgomery Prep. We know that they're offering scholarships. We know that Michael from Vandalia, I believe, Community School, offering scholarships. I'll be talking next week with 2 different providers. This wouldn't check the in-person box, but 2 different providers that are trying to meet the need free of cost for those who don't need in-person care. And so the Cardinal Institute, Andrew, has a list of scholarship opportunities and resources. And the reality is, I know that all of this is very unsatisfying, that we're not able to give you a specific answer that would satisfy you. But the reality is, we're operating in this space and it's the best that we can do. So providers, engaging your community, fundraisers. I know that Doc Miller up in Brooke County, they're doing a fundraiser for, I get it, and I think it's Cornerstone or Covenant. I get Amy in Morgantown, and Kathleen in Brooke County mixed up there. So they're doing fundraisers to try to help provide scholarship money for Hope Scholarship students. So I want to acknowledge that that's happening and encourage those of you who need in-person care to not give up. Try to figure out a way that you can make that happen. You might want to know, well, then what? What if this does go up and running in 2 weeks? Can we be reimbursed according to the code? No, it doesn't look like the school would be able to reimburse you. So again, that's unsatisfying. Let's move over to those who can keep their children at home, but they don't want to be a full-time instructor. There is West Virginia Virtual Academy. Doug Cipoletti, I'm interviewing Doug and the principal Cheryl from WVVA tomorrow. They're enrolling students kindergarten through 10th grade. If you don't need in-person care, this is a free public option, and we are directing traffic there. I know in Mercer County tonight, they're offering an event for families in Mercer County for their virtual program. They're going to offer K through 12. WVVA is going to offer K through 10. If you want to be a full-time instructor, sometime next week, we're going to offer a webinar on planning your homeschool year, because you'll end up filing a notice of intent. One reason I'm not saying, yes, everybody just file a homeschool notice of intent, is you need to understand what is required of you by law in order to satisfy that exemption, because that's a legal exemption from compulsory attendance, exemption C, and there are requirements that you need to know about if you're going to file a homeschool exemption. And not everyone who wants to, who doesn't need an in-person setting needs to file that homeschool exemption, because if you don't want to be the full-time instructor, then a charter school option might make sense for you and you would enroll in that. I'm going to try to answer these pointed questions. The reality is right now, as far as Hope Scholarship is concerned, they have denied that request for that stay at the intermediate court. We do not know that we won't see a stay requested and granted at the Supreme Court level. We do know that the Supreme Court of West Virginia doesn't come back until September, but we don't know that they couldn't come together and give a response on that if a motion was filed. These are things that we just don't know. So is the door completely shut right now? No, it's not, because there is still a possibility that these things could happen. We also know that they've filed appeals to have this argued out. And so when it could possibly launch, it has not been determined because of that appeal process. So what is the timeline for submitting something to the Supreme Court? Tried to answer that. Do we need to send a new NOI for homeschooling? We'll link to the to our Google form here. I'm not going to give you this information unless you email me specifically, and then I will give you the information that you need based on your specific situation to move you forward. My family was planning to use Hope as the IIP for our 2 children. Both are compulsory age. We will homeschool for the upcoming school year since Hope is unavailable. Do we need to submit a homeschool notice of intent? And by what date? Email me. I can't give you that information just blanketly. Although you did a fantastic job providing information, you just need to email me specifically, because the advice or the information that I give you needs to go directly to you, and I need to ensure that somebody else isn't going to take that and think that all that sounds like the same situation. What, if anything, needs to be done to ensure our eligibility once the Supreme Court has a favorable outcome? Putting my children back into public school is not an option for us. This is the one thing that's just been so tough, because, I would love to see some guidance come out from someone that says, I know that they have said they're fighting for this, but the reality is we don't have anything that's cut and dry saying that the choices we make in response to the legal proceedings that are happening will not impact our eligibility. So it's frustrating, but we don't have that answer right now. If we submitted an NOI for Hope and chose a participating private school, what do we do? Still sending your kids? I think I answered that. If you're still sending them to the private school, their exemption is going to be through that private school, through enrollment with that private school. Let me say this. Compulsory attendance, your child is 6 by July 1st. They are mandated to be enrolled in school full-time in public school. That may look like your county may have a virtual option, for kindergarten, or in person. You may have an in-person charter school in the Eastern Panhandle, in-person charter school in Morgantown, and they would be able to be enrolled there, and that would satisfy compulsory attendance. So it's enrolling full-time in public school, in person or virtual, and public school includes charter schools. Charter schools are public schools. So that is how you satisfy compulsory attendance. If you're not going to choose one of those options that I just covered, if that's not what's going to happen, virtual charter, WVBA, all of that, if that's not what's going to happen, and you want them to be exempt from that compulsory attendance, exemption B is enrolling them in a private school that has an agreement with the county. In Raleigh County, Mount Tabor Christian is an exemption B school. St. Francis is an exemption B school. You can enroll them in that. They communicate with the county, and that satisfies that exemption. They have attendance requirements. They have assessment requirements, and we'll drop a photo of our profile chart into the comments for you as well. You can enroll in exemption K. School has an agreement with the state. You can homeschool, which is exemption C. You need to assess and instruct in 5 required subjects and submit those assessments in 3rd, 5th, 8th, 11th. Testing is not mandatory. You do have an option for a portfolio review that has to be reviewed by a certified teacher. That's a compilation of the work for your academic year, and your child needs to show progress. We've got 2 statewide homeschool organizations, CHUV and WVHEA. And then, of course, we do have HSLDA. If you want true legal advice, Mike Donnelly at HSLDA is willing to advise you for those who have a membership with HSLDA. I work with Mike often, and if you have an interesting situation and you want legal advice on homeschooling, then that's who I would recommend talking to. All of that to say, they are for traditional homeschoolers and the expansion and protection of homeschooling freedoms. They are not for, they do not actively work with Hope Scholarship families. So you should know that, there is a distinction between those and who is working for Hope Scholarship and who is not. That's homeschool. Of course, we've covered Hope Scholarship. And then there's the micro school and learning pods. That is a new exemption this year. Exemption N as in Nancy. We've been waiting for some more formal language to come out from the Department of Education. Haven't seen that. I do know HSLDA is talking about supporting learning pods. So if a group is saying, hey, these moms can get together and these moms and dads can provide in-person care, we don't want to file an exemption B with our county. We don't want to be exemption K with our state, but we can come together, and we have a facility that meets fire code and other requirements, and we're going to come together and instruct these kids. You might have a creative idea. If you do, I want to hear about it. Reach out. I will help you ensure that that option is compliant and checks the boxes so that you can meet those kids where they are. This is what we know. A lot of it is what we don't know, right? If you have a specific situation, the only way I can help you is if you email me. It's jamie@wvfue.org. You're going to fill out a Google form first, acknowledging that I'm not an attorney, that I can't give you legal advice. But then I can assess your situation and provide you information that I feel like is helpful in making and moving forward. I'll close with this. We're at the wire for many of you, and I want to acknowledge that. But if you don't need in-person care and you're comfortable being their full-time instructor, you have some time to see what happens. How much time? You'll have to email me to see what your options are for that. But you do have some time. For those of you who are looking to enroll in public school, keep in mind that you may not be restricted to your attendance area school. So if you would like to enroll in a school that's outside of your attendance area, happy to help you navigate that. We're working with schools across the state right now on transfers within the county, outside of the county. And so the best encouragement I can give you is that there are options, and for you to fully understand them and be able to make the right decision from them, I want to walk that journey with you. So I'm Jamie. We're the West Virginia FUE Families United for Education. And I hope that my inbox fills up tonight and tomorrow with questions from parents so that you guys can move forward and figure out your next step. You guys have a great evening.